Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is March 30th, 2021, and today we're talking to Michigan native Cody Pierson, and we're talking about hunting 3 to 5 acres and killing consistent bucks on that ground year in and year out. All right, welcome back to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and today is episode 153. And today's episode is with Michigan native Cody Pierson. And Cody reached out to me not too long ago and was telling me about some of the bucks that he's been taking on his piece of ground that's roughly 3 to 5 acres here in Michigan, in the central Michigan area. And now when he was showing me these bucks, I'm like, there's no way. There's no possible way this has happened, and this is happening here in Michigan. Cody is killing consistent stud deer with a bow or with a gun year in and year out on this piece of ground. He has just got this piece of ground so dialed that it's basically not if he's going to kill one, it's just when, each year. So it's a really cool episode. We kind of get into, the evolution of like where the property started and kind of how it progressed from like 2016 until now. And I mean, there was one year him and his dad both tagged out on 2 bucks a piece, 4 really good bucks in Michigan on this 3 to 5 acres. It's unbelievable. Something I've never even heard of, really. But this is a good episode. Hope you guys enjoy. I did have a little technical difficulty halfway through this episode, I think. The reason being is Cody was actually in a hotel room. He's on the road working right now, and we only could do like a FaceTime audio call, and we dropped a call for some reason, but we pick right up and we keep everything going. So appreciate you guys' support. Thank you guys for everything week in and week out. I say it every week, but go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating, and leave a review. That'd be greatly appreciated. So with that being said, I'm going to get over this interview with Cody, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. And welcome back to the Fall Podcast. And today I've got Cody Pierson on from Michigan, another Michigan guy, and I'm excited about this one for good reason. Cody is a small property hunter and doing it at a very high level. So Cody, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for coming on, man.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. Looking forward to it and excited.
Yeah, definitely. I am as well. I mean, when you reached out to me and showed me the pictures of the bucks that you've been killing on a very small piece of ground and being successful year in and year out on it, I'm a sucker for that, man, and I'm excited to get into this because, you and I had like a pre-call and kind of brushed on some things, but really didn't dive into the weeds on it, and for good reason, because I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth first thing today. So I'm excited to do this, man.
Yes, me too.
Well, before we do get into it, I do it to everybody, but kind of give everybody a little brief synopsis of who you are, where you're from, and what you do for a living.
Okay, yeah, obviously Cody Pierson. I'm originally from the Portland area, raised and graduated from Portland High School. Always lived around the Ionia area, though. I am 30 years old. I work for an excavating company, running machinery, and a little bit of everything. And that's basically it. So
okay, and you're saying Portland, Michigan, right? Not Portland like Oregon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Portland. Yeah, Portland, yep. Michigan. Yep.
No, I knew you did. So I wanted to make sure everybody out there knew. But yeah, I'm excited, man. So I guess kind of to kick this thing off, let's get into how you grew up as a hunter. Like, how did you get into it? Was it a young age kind of thing? Your dad kind of got you into it, or was it something off the wall, just did it yourself? Like, how did that kind of work out and evolve into what it is today?
No, it was pretty much the basic story. I mean, my dad took me at a young age. I think the first time he took me out, I was 4 or 5. And I just got hooked. I would always I didn't live full-time with my dad, so whenever I was with him during hunting season, that's all we were doing. And I would ask him when we going, and he would take me. And then, he taught me everything I know, and I just kind of took it to a whole new level, I guess. And learned, evolved off of what he taught me. And growing up, there was times where I would leave his house and go out back, and I would be gone from daylight till dark, and just spend my time in the woods. Every weekend I was there growing up. So
yeah. So when did you think, like, how old were you when you kind of got bit by the bug of, like, the serious bug? You know, I mean, I've said it before, like, a lot of us, me in particular, grow up and, like, you think you're serious, but then it, like, kind of clicks and it's like, man, I want to, you know, go to the next level, like, and consistently getting on good deer and year after year. Like, when did that serious bug hit you?
Kind of early. I killed my first bull buck when I was 13. And it was a 7-point, it was roughly 15, 16 inches wide, a nice Michigan buck. And it was my first deer actually with a bow, or first buck with a bow. I killed a doe before that. But, I remember shooting it, and I remember that I didn't even felt like I touched the sticks going down the tree, running to my dad. And it's just after, you know, shooting light. And ever since that moment, it just clicked, and I just wanted to do, you know, that was my whole life. Yep. And then as I got older and started shooting consistently and shooting good deer, I just wanted to one up my personal best every year. And, you know, some years I do, some years I don't. But that's just what the drive comes from. And, you know.
Yeah, I can totally get that.
Yeah.
And so when you got hit, you know, bit by that bug and everything, like you said, you felt like you were evolving. Did it come fast? Like when you know, year after year, was it like, wow, this is like, was it an accelerated learning curve, do you think? Or was it like one of those things that was like slowly progressing? Because I guess what I'm getting at is when it happened for me, it was like 3 years in a row, I felt like I couldn't do anything wrong. You know, I was seeing the bigger deer that I've ever seen consistently, you know, and maybe not getting opportunities at them, but still seeing them. And I'm like, wow, this is like, what am I doing differently here? Was it like really a fast progression for you, or was it more like slow going?
That, I would say the want was very fast, but progression as far as like getting on them and consistently seeing them was, I wouldn't say slow, but like you know, how do I say this? I guess slow progression to where I got, you know, I was learning new tactics, you know, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? And then every year I would try to fix that. And, you know, each year I would get to where, you know, I would learn from the past mistakes and grow off them, the new mistakes. And then I would just constantly, you know, check myself to where what I was doing right. And that, you know, and the bug, like I said, after I killed my first buck, the bug was there. I mean, I was hit. This is what I wanted to, you know, do for the rest of my life. Yep. You're never going to take that out of me. So.
Right. Now, has it ever been a thought in your mind that you're like, man, I got to kill a buck every year?
Yes. You can ask my wife. I'm thinking about hunting 365, 24/7. And like, even when we're driving down the road, she says I make this weird squinty eyes, and she's like, all right, what's on your mind? And I'm like, I'm just looking at, like, I'll be looking at a random piece of property, and I'm like, that would be killer to hunt. And that's just what goes through my mind driving. And she's like, do you think about anything else? And I'm like, no, you knew this when we started dating. I said, you married it. So, but no, it's just, I'm constantly thinking about, you know, what I can fix. And, I try to kind of like what I just said, I kind of check myself, because like you'll have your buddies that kill a nice deer and it's like, all right, my turn. I got to get on a deer. I got to kill a buck. But you know, then I take a step back, and you hear this a lot from other guys, and it's like, you know, you got to regroup and remember, you know, it's just not all about killing a deer or killing an animal. It's, you know, there's a lot of reasons why we're out, you know, in the woods.
For sure.
And so I try to remember that, but yes, I mean, constantly I'm trying to get on a certain deer or just a nice Michigan deer.
Yep.
And yeah.
So. What would you say your goals are in Michigan? Is it like a size thing? Is it an age thing? Or is it just, maybe pick out one deer from year to year and I'm going to go after that deer.
You there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry. I did
Yeah.
a little technical difficulty there. Maybe I was covering up the phone there.
Yeah. No, you went completely silent.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No, you're all right.
We're back after this station's identification, I guess. A little technical difficulty there. No, we're just going to run it, man. I think we're just going to run it. But what I was saying was, what is your goals in Michigan? Like, is it a size thing? Is it an age thing? Or is it, maybe do you pick out one deer each year and you're like, I'm going to go after that deer? Like, how do you justify your goal? Or I shouldn't say justify your goals, but how do you set your goals and what are they?
Okay. Depending on the year and like what my cameras are showing and stuff, but I try to go after a good 3.5-year-old deer or older in Michigan now. I mean, back when I was younger, it didn't matter. Still to this day, if a buck comes in and gets me excited, I'm probably gonna 9 times out of 10 kill that deer.
Yep.
But I'll go off my cameras or just scouting during the summer, and I try to pick out a buck, or if I see a buck, I'll be like, all right, I got to get on him. And but as goals, I mean, each year has that's my goal each year. But as a personal goal, I've always wanted to reach that 150 mark here in Michigan.
Okay.
Which not very easy.
Yep.
But and as we'll go on, I'm close to it, but haven't reached it yet. So
yeah, for a lot of Michigan guys. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. No, I was just gonna say, every year is just I usually pick out a few bucks or at least one and go after them if I can.
Yeah, and that 150 mark, man, that's something that a lot of Michigan hunters never even they might not even see that type of deer,
No, yes, I know, and that's just a personal goal I've set, and I don't like to. I've never been a score guy until I killed a few of the deer that I sent to you, and then, but still, like I said, that's where I get back to where I'm rechecking myself, and that's not what it's all. That's not why I hunt,
Right.
It is, but it isn't. If I don't ever get one, so be it. But it's just a personal goal, and hopefully I'll achieve it. So.
Yeah, definitely, man. And you got to set those goals for yourself. I'm a firm believer in that, and try to achieve those, because I feel like if you don't, it's not so much of like what are you doing this for, but it's a good benchmark, and for me, it makes me work a little harder. I don't know about you, but it's just like I'm very goal oriented and very goal driven, and it's like, if I don't set those benchmarks, maybe sometimes I get a little lax and I really forget about why I'm doing what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
Exactly. That's exactly what I am, or how I am. And it's funny that you say that, because I set some marks for myself this year in 2021, and there's 3 goals that I want to reach, and I'll do my best to reach them. And there's 2 of them that pertain to hunting, and then one's just a personal goal.
Yep.
So, but once I usually set a goal, my mind's on it, and I'm going to do everything in my power to get to it.
Very cool, man. That's awesome. Well, I want to get into what today's podcast is all about. And just to kind of, in brief, so everybody's up to speed here, you're on the podcast today because you've killed some really good deer in the last couple years in one tree stand, right? The same tree stand?
Yeah, 2 separate tree stands, but in the same general area.
Okay.
Not very far apart.
And you're doing this on how many acres again? What was it?
My stepmom's family owns 100 acres, but I'm limited to about, I would say, 3 of it.
You can only hunt 3 acres out of the 100 acres.
Pretty much. I mean, there might be 5 acres total to where I can, but I'm kind of limited to where I can put my stands, and that's just because my family, we all are kind of designated to a certain spot, and I got to keep in that spot, and it's just how my uncle's, runs it, and it's worked out for me. I can't complain, but it does make it hard. And guys that I'll talk to, they're like, oh, why don't you just, it would be easy where you hunt, and it's like, no, it's not. I can't just, I have to, if I see a buck traveling a certain path, it's not like, oh yeah, I can just hop over there and move to it. So
yeah, so you're probably limited on, like, you can't really get that mobile. You probably have to stay right tight, don't you?
Yes, I like once my stand's set, or that's where it's staying, and it's been I've due to some logging the recent years, they took out a couple trees that were kind of opened it up to where I wasn't, say, hidden as good. So I might have moved over a tree or two just to get blended in a little better.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm very limited to tree, and just in the trees and the trees in the woods, there's very few trees that are good for the tree stands that I hunt in. So
yep. So now, how did the acreage get, like, chopped up? Like, how did you end up with this 3 to 5 acres, we'll call it? Like, what was that process like?
So, my stepmom and dad live around the property. All my family, stepmom's family, my family, live around the property. So they pretty much circle it.
Okay.
And so, like, my uncle that is to the east of me, if you go straight behind his house, that's like his area. And then straight behind my stepmom's house is like me and my dad's area. And then my other aunt and uncle, and then another aunt and uncle on the other side of the property. They're kind of, it's kind of like, stick behind the house.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
And so, and we all have set gun blinds, set tree stands. Me and my dad and my one cousin are pretty much the only bow hunters. And that's what, that's how it is. A lot of my family gun hunts. But so usually there's only 3 of us bow hunting it, but we still got to stick to our area.
I gotcha. So
yeah.
So is your dad and yours area like the same area then, the same 3 to 5 acres?
Yeah. Yes. Like, it's funny and people might think it's crazy, but me and my dad's stand is literally 90 yards apart.
Really?
Yeah, like we can't see each other just the way the woods is set up, and there's a little hill in the middle of the woods to where we're at. You can't see each other, but yeah, it's as the crow flies, it's 90 yards, if maybe 100.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Now, how does this 3 to 5 acres lay out? Like, is it all timber, or is it like oak ridge, or is there any food on it, little food plots? Like, how does it lay out?
So where I'm at the end of, there's 3 big fields that have fence rows dividing them, and then it comes into a block of timber. So majority of the property is actually farm field, but there's about, I'd guess, 15 to 20 acres of hardwoods.
Okay.
And I'm at the very west end of it, where I'm at the end of the woods where it butts up to usually always corn. It's a cornfield that has a fence row that comes right down and ties into the woods, and then there's like a grassy, wouldn't say, it's not really CRP, it's just overgrown thicket that runs to the north of me that actually ties into where my uncle's yard is. And then so it's almost like a corner that I'm hunting of the woods that ties into where 2 of the fields and a fence row meet, and then my neighbor's field actually comes and butts up to it. So
okay. And then do you have any like oak trees or anything like that?
It's like a little acorn flat.
Okay.
Yep.
And is it pretty mature, or is there a lot of understory?
There's a lot of under. It was, and then they logged it they actually logged it about 15 years ago, and then they just recently logged it last winter. And so they took out quite a bit of the trees.
Okay.
And so yeah, so this past year was kind of an almost regrouping of the deer pattern, because they just changed the whole landscape of the woods.
Yep. Is it coming back pretty thick already?
I was actually really surprised this past season how thick it got, and then I'm stoked to what it's going to be this upcoming season.
Yep.
But yeah, it's going to make it a lot better, because it was pretty wide open woods.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to be prime,
Yes.
if you can wait it out. Like, that's the thing. Like, up at my family farm here, a lot of it just got logged off right when COVID hit, like right in the last spring. So about a year ago, it got logged off, and this fall we were like ecstatic because all the new growth, like the popples and all that stuff, were like taller than me. I'm only like 5'10", but I mean it got really tall, and the deer absolutely loved it. And I'm like, man, imagine this in 5 years. You know how crazy it's gonna get.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I am. And actually, this past fall, actually the way they logged it and the way they set the tops actually helped me with harvesting the buck that I did. Because it kind of he pretty much had to walk right to my stand to get out of where he was bedded down at.
Okay, so, I gotcha. So I want to go back a little bit because was it 2016 when you killed the 2 like real big bucks on there?
Yes. Yep. Back to back. Yes.
Okay. So let's go through that. Like in 2016, what was the timber like? Like how was the woods set up? Was it just mature with a little understory? Like how did it set up then?
The woods was actually pretty. The reason they logged it again this year was just because it was getting more open, and there actually wasn't a lot of undergrowth. So I guess, part of the woods was very mature, but like down at my end, it was pretty open. I mean, there was a little bit of undergrowth, but it was, I would say my end of the woods was maybe 50 to 60% mature, to where, I knew that this year logging it was going to help with the undergrowth, which it already did. But that's pretty much how it was. Like down the west or east side of the woods was very, thick and already had good undergrowth going, and was going to be, I would say didn't need the logging, but they did anyways. So,
okay. Now, when you go into this piece of ground, now having a small piece of ground, which a lot of people know, can be very difficult to hunt just because of entry and exit. Do you find it really hard to enter your stands and exit the stands without kicking deer or kicking deer?
Yes, every time. If I don't kick a deer going in, don't matter which, because my one aunt, I'll either park, depending on the wind, I'll either walk straight out from my dad's house, or depending on the wind direction, I'll go over to my aunt's house and park and walk in. And usually 9 times out of 10, I'll go over there anyways, because I like to slip up that fence row, and I can see both fields and see what's in my neighbor's field, and I can slip right into my stand quietly. But sometimes I have to go out behind my dad's house, and usually, I mean, either way, I'm kicking up deer, just because the deer population around that block is so heavily, and due to my neighbors, how they hunt and everything.
Okay.
So, if I don't kick a deer up, there's either something wrong, or there's just, it's unordinary for me to not kick up a deer, which it sucks, but I'm used to it. And the deer, my uncles and all them have gators, and we ride quads and golf carts back there. So they're actually used to, I guess people
used to a little bit of noise.
Used to the gators and stuff like that. And my aunts and my stepmom will take walks and go for walks around the fields and stuff. So they've just become accustomed to it over the years.
I got you. Okay. So with kicking deer and all that stuff, it makes it difficult, like I said, but you're hunting basically 1 to 2 tree stands in the same tree basically every time. So throughout the years, have you noticed the deer movement changing a little bit? Maybe getting a little farther and farther from these trees, or has that played into a factor at all of like only being able to hunt 1 or 2 trees?
Yeah, it does. And what I'll try to do is I will actually move. I'll be in the same tree, and I try to pick out. I like groups of trees. I don't like single trees. I don't like great big huge trees by themselves. I'll try to find a group of trees, which that's what I'm in. It's a group of like 3 or 4 trees that are all tightly together. And so I found out over the years, like, you'll have that old doe that just comes in and she'll pick you out every time. And so what I'll do each year is I'll actually move my stand to a different position and try to reposition myself to where I'm just breaking, so that way then the deer is so used to, there he is standing up there. And
right, exactly.
I'll try to reposition my stands to where, it might be a different height. One year I'm at 15 feet. Next year I'm at, 22 feet, or I might even only be 10 foot off the ground.
I got you.
It just depends on, the year. And, like I said, can move a little bit from tree to tree, but I've been in my tree stand has been in the same tree now since 2000. I moved after I killed those 2 bucks in 2016. I moved to this tree in 2017 and been there since then.
Okay. So what makes this 3 to 5 acres the best? Like, what makes it to where these caliber of deer come through here all the time? Is it like a rut thing, or is it just like good cover, food? Like, what is it?
It is a rut thing mostly. That's when I get most of the deer to come in there. But a lot of the does actually bed to the east of me, and they actually to where they go on to my neighbors. So they actually come right by there, heading to my neighbor's field in the evenings and in the mornings, and then late mornings they're all coming back, to catch the bed or whatever. So they pretty much, it's like a travel corridor almost. I just, with the bucks and certain deer, they just got to kind of, depends on which trail they take that day. So it's kind of luck of the draw that they're coming down the trail right by my tree stand or close enough for a shot. Because a lot of the deer that I've killed, I've grunted in off the other trails.
Yep.
That aren't necessarily right within shooting range. But it's just, so they use that fence row a lot and come right down that fence row into the woods. And so that's basically it. It's just, there's acorns, so they'll stop and, obviously eat for a little bit.
And that's the thing too with those little small little woodlots. It's like, if you can hunt them in the rut, and I'm a firm believer in being able to like even sit all day in the rut in those, because the thing is you might not see a lot of deer, but when you do see them, it's probably going to be the buck that you're looking for, and they're probably just coming through cruising, looking for that next hot doe.
Yes. Yep. And actually 3 of the biggest bucks that I've killed off the property have been after 11 in the morning.
Okay.
Between that 11 and noon area.
Okay. So let's get into the 2016. Take me through the first deer that you killed in 2016. Like, what time of year was it? And kind of break down like how that happened.
Okay. It was November 13th. It was a Saturday, and that is my favorite day, ultimately, to be in the woods. I've killed November 12th and November 13th are my 2 favorite days. I've killed most of my deer on those 2 days. And so it was a Saturday morning, and usually, that time we're either trying to catch up on late work in the season. So usually I'm working, but for some reason we weren't that day, and my dad actually had to work. So I actually called him the night before and said, checked in. I said, "Hey, you hunting in the morning?" He's like, "No, got to work." And I'm like, "All right, well, if you're cool with it." The wind, even though the stands are, like I said, are only 90 yards apart, the winds played different for each one of them. So the wind was actually going to be really good for his stand. And so I was like, "Hey, if you don't mind, I'm just going to go sit in your stand." He's like, "Yep, you don't have to ask." And I'm like, "All right, sweet." So that next morning I got up, and there's actually a little dusting of snow on the ground that morning, and it was cold. And I went and climbed up in his stand and got all settled in. And I had that year, I believe that year was before the antler. Am I right? That was before the antler point restrictions were on in the southern counties.
I'm almost positive it was. Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was, because I had like we talked before, I had a really big 6-point that it was an older deer that I was actually after that year. And first light, he was actually down in the corner to where I could see him, and he was actually working his way toward my stand. So I'm sitting there like kicking myself, like, you made the wrong choice, and second guessing myself. And so I just let out a few contacts, grunts.
Yep.
And because I'll look before I do a lot of blind calling, and it's just how I've always done it. But if I do see the deer, I'll try to, read his body language or his demeanor
For sure.
and see what type of mood he's in. And you could tell he was searching. And so I let out a few grunts at him, and I actually tucked my grunt call because I don't like to grunt. Once I see a deer, I don't like to grunt at a deer, just because I feel like, if you're pointing your grunt call at them and they're right there out, and, in front of you, you're just echoing, saying, look at me.
Yep.
But
it's like a big blowhorn up there.
Exactly. So I tucked my grunt call like kind of under my arm and pointed it away from him, and just let out a few, like I said, like 3 or 4 little contact grunts. And he picked his head up, and he stopped like dead out of his walk and picked his head up and looked at it, looked over my way, and I'm like, sweet, I got his attention. And so I just left it at that, and it was no more than a second, and all of a sudden I heard a twig snap behind me, and I just kind of like slowly turned my head and could just see the right side of his rack, and I'm like, holy shit. And he, I no more than turned around and grabbed my bow, and the deer's at 20 yards, and he comes in to 8 yards, and I was already, I drew back when he stepped behind a tree. He stepped out. I smoked him at 8 yards. He actually took a bound and stopped because my arrow blew right through him. And, he didn't know what happened. And blood's just pumping. And he's just looking around like, what the heck was that? And all of a sudden, he just tipped over right there at 20 yards.
Holy cow.
And so I'm just sitting there, like, with my hands on my head, just like, what just happened? And at the time, I knew right off the bat it was my biggest buck. And so, the shakes coming. I didn't even have time to get, the fever. And then it kicked in once he tipped over. And I'm sitting there trying to fumble with I keep my phone right in my front pocket of that chest pocket.
Yep.
So I'm sitting there trying to get it out, shaking so bad, to call my dad. My dad's the very first call that I make when I kill a deer.
Yep.
And always will be, and he, I'm dialed up and I'm like, hey, and he's like, what's up? He goes, you calling me pretty early? I'm like, I just smoked a giant. And he's like, you did not. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, the rest of the day got canceled, so I'm on my way home. I'm like, all right. I said, you know where I'm at. And I said, come out here. And so that was how that deer ended up.
What happened to the 6-point then when you shot the other deer?
Honestly,
don't remember.
What's funny is I don't remember. I totally forgot about him.
Yeah, that's funny.
I'm sure. It's like I think back. I'm like, I could have. You might have still been over there and been like, heard all the ruckus and wondered what it was.
Could have doubled up.
And me fist pumping up in the stand probably didn't help him sticking around.
Yep.
But yeah, to this day, I still. I'll look at that mount in my house and I'll be like, I wonder what could have happened. And what's my neighbor down the road ended up actually killing that deer the next year, the 6-point.
Okay. How big was he?
He was huge. I've never, I don't know. I can't say score because I never really asked him or, he just sent me I got a picture of him, but he was just a giant. I would say he probably had 10, 11-inch G2s.
Oh, wow.
And just mass and huge brows. And then he was actually a 7-point. He had a little kicker. But I had him, me and my dad had him multiple times to where during muzzleloader season, that same year, or the year before that, 2016, I had him coming in during muzzleloader season, and he was never more than that 6-point. I mean, like I said, he had that little kicker that made him a 7. But that's how he was his whole. I think we had 4 or 5 years of pictures of him.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
And so yeah, and he was just old, gnarly 6-point.
That's awesome.
There's pictures like we set a trail camera in my dad's yard every year because deer like to go through this little. My stepmom and his yard's 2.5 acres, and like a half acre of it is like these pine trees, and just we leave tall grass. And the deer love to just come up there and bed. So we'll just set a trail camera just to see. And he was actually, that's where a lot of the times he was bedding, was right in my dad's yard.
Wow.
And so it was just cool. And, it couldn't have happened. My neighbor down the road that got him was a heck of a guy. It couldn't happen to a better guy. But, yeah, he totally went out of my mind after I watched that.
So when you shot the other deer, like, what was he? Like, how big was he? What was he, an 8-pointer, 9-pointer, 10-pointer? What was he?
He's a 9-point mainframe 9-point. He has a little tiny kicker that could possibly be a 10, but he ended up scoring 132 and an eighth.
Wow, it's a great buck.
He was actually only he's only just over 13 inches wide.
Man, so he's probably really got mass for days.
He's got mass. He's got one of his G2s was 11, the other one was 11 and a half, and then his G3s were 10.
Okay.
And so, yeah, he's just a massive tall deer.
What a stud.
Just not very wide.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what do you think happened? Do you think you're blind calling, or you calling it that 6-pointer? Maybe this deer was close by, heard that, and was like, hey, I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on over here?
Yeah, because that deer, he was coming in on a string. He didn't care of anything else. Because, I moved, I try not to move pretty fast, but, you catch yourself, all excited at that moment. And when I grabbed my bow, he didn't, in the stand, actually, my dad hunts out of a ladder stand. I use a hang on.
Okay.
And which my dad can't stand, because I actually fell out of a tree stand in 2012.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I fell 21 feet.
Holy cow.
Yeah, on that property. So, and you'd think it would have kept me from going back, but about 3 weeks later, I was back in the stand.
Jeez.
So, yeah. But so I was actually in his stand was a ladder stand that I killed it out of. And when I turned, it creaked, and I for sure thought that it was going to, and that buck didn't care. He was on a mission. He must have been, he was looking for that buck, or, what was going on.
He was in a trance, man. It's crazy when you get those deer like that. It's all like you almost have to go up and tap him in the nose and be like, hey, you know what I mean? It's like one of those moments you're so like laser focused, and he's got one thing on his mind, and he's like, he's got blinders on or something like that. It's crazy. It's really cool to see, though.
Yep. And I didn't have a single picture of this deer. I don't know. My dad's buddy, who actually lives about, I'd say a mile and a half as the crows fly away, had a trail cam picture of him in velvet.
Oh, really?
So that was pretty
cool.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool to have, but I did not personally have any pictures of the deer. I never saw him until that morning.
That's crazy, man. Mystery buck. You got to like that.
Yes. Actually, both, well, I don't want to give away the story, but both bucks from 2016 were mystery bucks.
Okay, so let's get into the next one. So that was November 13th?
Yep. So, so that was November 13th. And then, so 2 days later is obviously opening day gun season. And me and my dad have always sat opening day together. We built, and this was actually the first year that we built our new box blind. And we were sitting in, we got up, obviously had deer camp breakfast with family members and stuff, and got out in the blind that morning. And it was actually a really slow morning. We weren't seeing a lot of deer. And probably, I'd say 10:45, I watched this 8-point kind of run up off my neighbor's field and head towards the middle of our woods. And I told my dad, I just kind of, just because of hunting over the years, just you learn what the deer do. And I said, that buck's going to come down through the center of our woods right at us. Yeah. I said, he's looking for does. I know he is. And my dad's like, yeah, whatever, Mr. Whitetail, he always jokes with me. And so it wasn't 5 minutes, and all of a sudden you just hear burp, burp, and here he comes right through the center of the woods. And my dad just looks at me and shakes his head. And he's kind of looking at it like humming. And I'm like, I look at him, I'm like, are you going to shoot? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I've never personally killed a deer on opening day. And he was a nice 8-point. And I'm like, if you're not going to, shoot him, then here's the camera. I will. And he's like, no, I'm going to shoot him. And because my dad's not, he's an old boy. He could care less about, he wants to kill big bucks, but he gets excited, which I mean, anybody, if you don't get excited when a deer walks in, then you probably shouldn't be hunting anymore.
Yep.
So, and it's funny because I had the video still. So I start, running the camera, and you can hear my dad breathing, like getting so excited, and, and that's what it's all about. And so this buck comes in 50 yards, he drops it. And, we're hollering, hugging and, high-fiving and stuff. And we give it a few minutes, then we go out and, slap the tag on it, take pictures. Like I said, this is 11:15, and we go back up in the blind because we usually tend to sit all day. And about an hour, not even an hour, 45 minutes goes by. And, had my lunch with me and I went to go eat my sandwich, and my dad forgot his. So I'm like, hey, I'll walk up to the house, at noon and grab your sandwich for you. And he's like, no, I'm all right. And I'm like, all right. I said, well, I'm probably going to go to the house anyways. I only brought a water with me. And I said, I'm going to go grab a Gatorade or something. He's like, all right. I said, I'm going to finish my sandwich though. So I literally am getting ready to take a bite of my sandwich, and I look out the window, and this giant is standing over my dad's buck. And I'm like, like kind of like shocked, and I just reach over and tap my dad, and I'm like, Dad, look at, and he turns and he goes, like, same kind of thing. He's like, are you kidding me? Like, really lightly, and he's like, and he just looks at me and he's like, you can never let your old man shoot the big one, and because he was tagged out, that was his second buck. And I said, well, I haven't killed him yet, Dad. And so, I obviously grabbed my shotgun, and the buck was actually with a doe, and he was actually walking away, and I didn't think I was going to get a shot. And then finally I seen an opening that he was going to enter, and I just put the scope in that opening. And as soon as he entered it, I stopped him and had it right on him and shot. And he ended up running about 20, 30 yards and almost did like a huge, like horse rear up. He did that and tipped right over. And that's when the real, like, my dad like hollered. He's got a big deep voice, and I'm like, she, like, in the blind, it just echoed. And it's the first time we ever doubled up together, and it was just a great moment. And so
that's awesome.
I personally didn't even really, I just seen it had a huge frame. I didn't know what it was at the time, and so I couldn't at that moment. I couldn't tell you what it was.
Yep.
I just seen it had a big frame, and I did know on the one side it had at least 4. So, but as far as the whole thing, I couldn't tell you until I walked up on it. And then I just was in shock because it was bigger than the buck I'd killed 2 days previous.
Man. So walking up on this thing with your dad, I mean, you've already went through a whirlwind. You shot a good buck, your biggest buck to date, 2 days before. Your dad killed one, obviously, before then, and he kills one, and you both tag out on opening day. Like, what was your emotions like walking up there with your dad and looking at this buck?
It was probably, well, now looking back at the moment, it was probably the best moment besides my first buck when I ran up through the woods to my dad, and he wondered what was going on when I first shot my first bull buck. It was that next big moment right there. It was probably my biggest moment. Me and my dad, I'm kind of like you. I'm 5'10". My dad's 6'4". He's just a giant, and he's like grubbing me pretty much. He's like so excited, and I'm like, Dad, take it, take it. He's like pretty much, bear hugging me and carrying me pretty much. And we're just laughing, and my dad's not a real emotional guy, but he almost has like tears in his eyes because at the time I didn't have my son, so I didn't really, he's like, you'll understand when you have a boy, when stuff like this happens. And now that I do have my son, I do. But so we're walking up, and as we're walking up, my dad's he could see the left side sticking up, and he's like, son, are you shitting me? Like, and he's hugging me still, and I'm like, let me see, let me grab a hold of the rack, Dad. And so I pick it up, and it's just massive, wide. Ended up being a 9-point, or it's a mainframe 8 with a kicker that made it a 9, right? Pretty much a split brow. And I haven't like officially got them scored because I've only got my going back to, I don't want to kind of backtrack, but going back to when you asked me about my goals, I always wanted a buck in the commemorative buck of Michigan.
Yep.
And I killed one years ago that was like 120, and he got in the book. So, and then ever since then, I've just, with my buddies, taped them out and scored them myself. But so he ended up scoring, I think, 141 or 142 and an eighth.
Jeez, man.
Yeah, and he was almost 19 inches inside wide. Not really long tines, but huge sweeping main beams. Huge brows. He actually had like 6 or 7 inch brows.
That's crazy.
So yeah, and body wise was at the time biggest deer that I had killed until this past year, body wise. But yeah. So it was at the time was the best moment of my hunting, I guess say career.
Yeah.
Hunting life. Yep.
So, I mean, did your dad kill his first buck that year on that property as well?
That year?
Yep. So did he tag out on that same property?
Yeah, yep. He had already shot a bull buck. He had killed a similar, almost, his buck ended up being, I'd say it was a 115 to 120 inch 8-point, which is a nice, Michigan deer.
Heck yeah, it is. Yep.
So he had actually shot one a little bit smaller than that with his bow, earlier than what I had shot mine. I can't remember what date, but yeah, we were both tagged. That was both tagging out together.
Man, so, you took 4 good Michigan bucks off of 3 to 5 acres or whatever, and that's in 1 year. That's unheard of.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Now, did you know anything about the buck that you killed with your gun?
No. And that's kind of what's crazy is I didn't want to give it away when I was telling you about the November 13th, but as me and my dad were celebrating with my bow buck, my dad actually just drove his Ranger right out to my deer, and we were loading it up. And as we were, looking back, and after I shot that deer, the buck that I ended up killing on opening day was actually chasing a doe right at me and my dad as we were loading my bow buck in. And like I said, when I first shot him with the gun, I didn't know what it was. But then after looking at him, and, I remembered that deer 2 days ago chasing, and he got within 65 yards of the truck. And
wow.
I remember my dad, and I remember having my bow, and my dad's like, "Give me your bow." And I'm like, screw you, Dad. I'm shooting it if it comes in with my bow. But I remember that buck chasing a doe right by us that morning. So I didn't want to give it away, telling the story. But, so I did. But like I said, I didn't have any history of that buck besides seeing him that 2 days before. But the night before, and this will tell you how much, during the rut a deer can move. The night before, a guy actually had a trail cam picture of the buck I killed with my gun. He's about just under a mile away.
Okay.
And he had a trail cam picture on the 14th.
Wow.
So on the 13th, he was at our property. And then the 14th, he was at my, I would say he's not a buddy, but, a good neighbor down the road. Had a picture of him the 14th that night in his field. And then the 15th, he was back.
That's crazy. He's just cruising, just trying to find the doe.
Well, and yeah, I don't know if that was the same, because he, like you said, he was with a doe on the 15th. So I don't know if he was just pushing that doe all around, or if he was on, a lockdown. Usually when a lockdown deer, you're not going to see that deer. But so he could have just been searching for does and just got on, multiple those 2 days. So
that's crazy, man. That's so cool. But that's crazy to me. I mean, and it doesn't stop there. I mean, you've killed numerous bucks since then on this ground that are just as good. So take me through the 17, 18, and 19, and then obviously, this last year, how just rattle through some of the bucks that you've taken off this thing, you and your dad.
So 16, that happened 16. 17, I ended up, I think I only harvested one buck that year, and me being, I'm on the road right now working, so I'm in the hotel room, but if I was sitting in my house, I'm trying to think of what buck it was, but he's a European mount. He was a nice 8-point. I killed it was probably like I said, I'd say a 115 to 120 inch 8.17, and then 18. Similar, I killed another 120. I'd say 120 inch buck
Mm-hmm.
in 18, and then 19. I killed, which hopefully I'm getting back soon from the taxidermist, because due to COVID, my cape was like held up.
Yep.
At the tannery, but I killed 100, and he's actually, until I get him back and actually score him again, he might be my second biggest. I know he was like 130 when I just roughed him before I took him to the taxidermist.
Wow. And those are all on this property, right?
Yeah, those were out of the same stands. Yep.
Wow.
And then my dad, those years, my dad killed a few good 8 points. I'd say, anywhere from the 110 to 120 range. And which leads me to like we were talking about goals, how I want to kill 150. I don't care, like I said, if I reach that goal, great, and if the only way I'm going to do it is if I limit myself probably. And, and obviously if the deer is even there on the property that's at 150, but where it comes into hunting it, like I said, if a buck comes in and it triggers me, I'm going to take it. And it doesn't matter whether it's 115 inch buck or a 140.
Yep.
I mean, it's Michigan. The place has got a special place in my heart. So, that's why I kind of venture out of state now, because I have a better chance at killing maybe that 150 or bigger. So, and then this past year in 20, I killed a buck that I had 3 years of pictures of. I had 2 years of them, and then leading up all summer, I didn't get a picture of them. And then the day before I was leaving for Illinois, I was at work, and I have a Tacticam reveal, and heard the alarm, or heard the sound go off on my phone, knew exactly what it was, and was thinking, oh, it's just a squirrel, And it was the middle of the day, and maybe late morning, and all of a sudden I look and I'm like, holy shit. And I instantly knew what buck it was, and finally got a picture of him. And so I actually looked at my boss. I'm like, hey, what's the chances I can get out early? He's like, you're leaving for vacation tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, but I just got this picture and I need to go now. He's like, tell you what, if you get all this work done in time, you can leave at 2:30. I'm like, sweet. So got it done, headed out to the stand, got in my stand about, I'm going to say 3:30, 4 o'clock. And just after 5, I think, I was just sitting there. It wasn't really, it was October 24th, I think, either 3rd or 4th. And just sitting there, wasn't really, not much was going on. It was kind of a hotter day, and kind of a similar story to my 2016 bull buck. Just happened to hear a twig snap, and I turn and look, and this buck's standing at 35 yards. And I'm like, that I self-film now. And so got the camera going, and it's crazy in the video. Even my dad, you could tell he was an older buck because he stood in one spot for, you think about it, it's like, it feels like a half hour, but, looking back on the video, he was stood in one spot for at least 4 to 5 minutes and didn't move.
Very methodical at what he's doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the wind was perfect, so I knew he wasn't going to smell me. And he just was, just looking around, very slowly. One ear was just slightly moving every once in a while. And then all of a sudden he turned and went to kind of come closer. And when I reached out to turn the camera, he caught a glimpse of me moving. And I was like, oh, shit, I just ruined it. And he went to take a bound, and I just pulled my bow back quick, looked over at the camera, made sure he was still in frame. And I knew I had already arranged where he was at, and where my shots were at already previous. So I knew what range he was at, and I let it fly, and he ran about 70 yards and piled up.
Wow!
And he ended up being my biggest body deer, not necessarily rack. I think like I said, he ended up being, he's a 4.5-year-old buck, but he just was heavy and freakishly tall, not very wide, and that's kind of like the gene out there where my property. We usually have really tall, not very wide 8 points, and every once in a while you get a buck like my 2016 gun buck that's wide and heavy, but we have a lot of big 6 points and a lot of tall 8 points.
Okay.
And that's just the common deer out there.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
So,
I mean, what a heck of a 4 to 5 year run you and your dad are having.
Yeah.
You might have
like
the
I
best
said,
3 to 5 acres in Michigan that I know of.
Well, and if like people that know the area know my neighbors, and my neighbors own a ton of ground that butt up to us, and they don't go, like, people think I'm lying to them, and I have a picture. I'll have to send it to you. I have a picture of my neighbor's field that butts up to our woods, and in the picture you can count 84 deer in this field.
Wow.
And yeah, and I think if I remember right, there might only been like 2 or 3 bucks, and that's what's kind of the downfall to the property. We have so many does, and it's just the ratio's like crazy bad. But somehow, we continuously grow big deer around the area, and my neighbors do a big part in it. They don't go in their woods very often. They're farmers. They farm it. That's about it. But they won't step foot until season into they're very old fashioned, but they kill a good buck every year, and that's all they really kill is one good buck every year.
Yep.
And so,
with having all those deer though and all those does, yes, it can be a curse, but also, having a little piece of ground like that could also be a blessing, just because at any given moment there could be a hot doe in your woods, or
yes.
It could just been passing through,
Exactly, and that's what helps set, I think, my spot out. Personally, I don't want to sound selfish, but I've killed, like we obviously know that I've killed good bucks throughout the years, but if I could sit in the spot that I truly wanted to during bow season, I could maybe be telling even better stories. But, I can't complain. I've been blessed with good deer, good Michigan deer. And
yeah, you have.
So, and like I said, it's pretty much been that spot since I was 13 years old, since I killed that first buck out there. I think I've only went 1 or 2 years where I didn't kill a buck out of that spot.
That's
my
crazy.
whole hunting.
That's cool.
And
though.
I have. Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're fine. No, I was just gonna say that's cool because, not a lot of people can say that. Especially in Michigan. You're setting goals and you're achieving them just about every year. Hopefully you don't go on a dry spell where you got like a 4 or 5 year run where it's like nothing.
Yeah, hopefully not. I got some bucks that actually made it through this season. I actually have a picture of one that he goes through my tat cam at, like, I think it was 10 at night, and then 2 minutes later he goes through and he had already dropped his antlers like within that 2 minutes. So, and that's what sucks is I've been on the road this whole month, and so I haven't had time to go out and shed hunt it all yet.
Yeah.
So,
they're there somewhere for you.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I find them, or at least get my hands on one of them, because he was actually on the hit list for this past season, along with that other buck. So as long as nothing happens to him over the course of the year, he's going to be a complete stud this year. So
that's cool, man. Well, good luck to you. I hopefully you get after another one, and it sounds like you're probably going to. So
yeah, I'm hoping, and I'm hoping, like I said, now I've started my self-filming stuff recently, so hopefully it all plays out on film again like it has been the last couple of years. So,
well, good deal, man. Well, we're coming up on time here. I want to thank you for coming on and doing this. Thank you for reaching out to me. It was a great story. I love hearing stuff like this, and I know a lot of the listeners out there like hearing it too. So thank you very much for coming on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was a blast, and hopefully do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Now, before I do cut you loose, though, you said you're doing a lot of self-filming. Do you have your content out anywhere on YouTube or anything? Like, if you do, kind of direct people towards that.
Yep. And, I actually just recently started. I'd like to, a couple of years, the last 2 seasons, not this year, but the past 2, I actually worked with a couple buddies from Lethal Instincts, was filming with them. And then I just had some personal stuff come up, and goals that led me to start what I started now. So what I come up with, I just started. It's called Life at Full Draw. It's the YouTube is actually getting worked on right now to get up and running, but I do have a Facebook page and Instagram content. There's a few videos on there right now. Like I said, just getting started on it. So that's YouTube will be up and running. I'll post a link. There's a page you can go follow off Facebook or on my personal page, Cody Pierson.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks, dude. I appreciate that.
And if I can, I actually am running. Like I do this every year. With turkey season coming up, I actually am running a little contest on my Facebook page. What I do is you got to go to the page, like and share, and post. Just done and you're entered into. I usually take out a youth hunter, but this year I'm doing a little different. Anybody who wants to go on a filmed turkey hunt with me, I don't care if you killed 100 turkeys or if you've never killed one. It's just going to be a random drawing, and you'll get it's going to be fully filmed and for you. So
awesome, man. Well, cool. I mean, Everybody listen, if you're interested in that, go to his Facebook page and go to Instagram. Keep an eye on all that stuff, and maybe you can go and get your turkey hunt film. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep. It's just something I started a few years ago, and just want to continue it. So.
Nice, man. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on and doing this. Thank you very much, and obviously good luck this next fall. And if you get another good story come out of here, maybe we'll have to run it back and do another one, man.
Most definitely. I'm always down for that. So
cool, buddy. Thank you very much, and you have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, there you have another great episode. Cody Pierson, thank you very much for coming on and, talking about your 3 to 5 acres. It's crazy. This stories that, he's doing year in and year out on this property is unbelievable. But thank you to him. Thank you, everybody out there listening. I'm going to say it again. I can't thank you guys enough. Each week in and week out, it's unbelievable. The more support we get, the better. The downloads are like crazy high. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys very much. But I do need you to go over to Apple Podcasts or iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and leave a review. If you've already done it, maybe go do it again. I'd appreciate that. So thank you guys very much. We're going to be right here next week back on the Fall Podcast.